Hi again. So let's talk about Carlyle, who was one of the major writers of the period throughout the period and who was viewed by many as their priest. When Victorians started losing faith, and many of them did when Darwin's work came out in 1859, and they were leaving the church before that anyway. We know that from the 1850 census. Carlyle was the man that many people turned to. In fact, there's a very sad letter from someone who wrote him who was just a fan and said, I really can't live without your work. You are my preacher now. I listen to you for what I should do. Meaning that they didn't believe in God anymore. So Carlyle has one foot in the Romantic period and one foot in the Victorian period. He's early in the Victorian period, so he still knows the Romantics. He has very romantic passions and emotions. He keeps using the symbolism of God, even though he doesn't really necessarily believe in a Christian God. He keeps using this idea that we have to know we're in a vital and godlike universe, that it has purpose and meaning. Otherwise, we will die. We will suffocate as human beings. And he throughout past and present, he keeps referring to God, and he keeps creating mythologies. It's in some ways the same as the Romantics, but his, as he realizes, have to be very practical. And let's just go page by page on the piece that we're looking at very quickly. He said, this is the most important thing facing England. No longer is it imagination or reason, fighting reason, or being in the clouds the way the Romantics were. He says wages and work. That we have never faced a time where human beings are starving in the ways they are now in England. And so he creates a mythology. He looks back to the medieval period when this cash nexus was not a cash nexus, but it was a nexus of community. People were in classes, there were higher classes, there was a hierarchy, the great chain of being was there, but it was good because people had support. They knew that they were cared for. They knew the upper class master cared for them and that they had a role and that they would never starve. And Carlyle longingly looks back to that as a time that was God approved. He talks about what is it with cash and mammon. Mammon is his word for cash and the love of material things. A society can't live on that. It can't be communal and caring for each other if it only cares about cash. And he is saying, we are living in a time that is not sport, it's not game, it is grim earnest. He talks about the coldness of laissez-faire economics, laissez-faire meaning leave economics alone to do its work. Economics is more important than man. And so that's the only way our economy can work, which is a pretty dreadful economy, according to Carlyle. And he warns that it will certainly lead to democracy, which he despised, or more French revolutions. And then he famously refers to the Irish widow, and he says, yes, hierarchies are good, we need them. And remember that Irish widow starving and other Irish eating their children in Stockport, their disease will infect you. If you don't care for them, their disease will infect the whole. And he meant literal disease because there were cholera breakouts everywhere. And he and Dickens were trying to say, we are all one. We are all connected, and disease will kill all of us, whether it be spiritual or this medical disease that is rampant at the time. And so, as I said, he turns to this mythology of the past, this myth that medieval England was a time of giants. It was a time of William the Conqueror, who was God ordained to rule the English people with a strong hand. And Carlyle is all about having a strong hand and having a strong leader. Because he says that is what England needs now, is somebody the workers will follow. this famous line where he says, "Liberty to die by starvation is not divine," and that's what he's seeing in the capitalism of the time. And he's saying to the worker, find a great leader, and he will say that the captains of industry, the heads of the the factories, should be our leaders. And he uses Germanic and Scandinavian mythology, Odin, etc. Be strong, be powerful, be manly in your culture, and you workers follow in line step by step your leader, because he is God ordained to be noble. And Carlyle says, what is it with money, this disgusting hell that we think the worst hell is not to have money in our society. It used to be that we believed in heaven and hell was a spiritual death, not an economic one, but that's all we care about now. And so he's got some wonderful radical beliefs mixed in with very conservative beliefs about the lower classes staying in their place and following the upper classes. And clearly the upper classes are changing and turning to be the leaders of factories and of the Industrial Revolution, no longer the aristocracy of the past. And he even refers, and remember, Keats views himself as a surgeon, as a healer, and Carlyle turns that a little bit and says, well, William the Conqueror was put in England to be the surgeon to England, to be the strong leader that we needed. So let's go to, he says on page 1073, wake up. And this is his whole point, is that England is asleep, that everyone's asleep. They're not watching what's happening to society. It's falling apart. There is no longer a commitment and community in England. It can't be a great nation state if all we care about is money, and that is our only hell. So he says, stop slumbering, wake up, listen up. And that's why his rhetoric is so strange. It's bizarre. It's preacherly. It's very imagistic. He uses a lot of capitals. He uses a lot of dashes. He uses a lot of exclamation points. He's trying to wake you up. And so notice that in his rhetoric. He says, this is not playful poetry like, well, hint, hint, those romantics. It is sober fact. We have got to face the condition of England right now. We are in the throes of the devil. And then he says on the next page, 1074, he says, love of men cannot be bought by cash payment, and without love, men cannot endure to be together. So a society, he's saying, is built on love, and that England no longer has that love. It only has love for mammon. It only has love for money. And so he says, God meant for you to work, and he uses the capital W there. Work is our new idol, frankly, for him. It's what God put us in the world to do. And he's trying to say there's a chivalry of work. He puts a mythology around it of being bold, of being brave, of being good, of being noble, that now it is noble to be a worker and to follow your captain of industry. He says, yes, it is good to be a regimented mass following your leader. And we can see hints of, I'm sorry to say, Nazism here. And he will influence Nietzsche, and Nietzsche will influence the Nazi regime. And we do see that here, so do notice that. But Carlyle is a grand voice. He's an amazing voice. Listen to him. Don't get irritated with him. He's trying to wake you up, as he's trying to wake up the Victorians to the condition of England.